So this whole lab is a Faraday cage?
Yeah.
And where's the vibration thing, the floating thing?
This is the floating Q slab.
Okay, can you stand on that? You feel...
Relatively lightweight, but
Uh-huh.
if a heavyweight person stand here, you can hear there's gas circulating to saturate this.
Okay, so you stand on that, you can feel like it's floating?
Well, you need to look at this edge very carefully.
Okay,
to
then
see
you can
if
see.
the edge is moving.
I see.
Okay. Well, I guess we start with some background stories. Right? So, how did you decide you want to be a scientist?
From multiple things. Well, so firstly, I am from a family where there are a lot of teachers. Like my family teach math, Mandarin, physics, English, a lot of different things.
You mean your parents?
The whole family, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles.
I see.
So it's a family really focusing on education. Then I think since I was a kid, my grandparents took me to the bookshop every weekend. I think it's the thing that built up over time to focus on science and focus on education.
So they were high school student or like the high school teacher or they teach college or what?
High school teachers.
High school. Okay.
Yeah.
What about your parents?
Yeah, my father is also a high school teacher in math.
I see.
And my mom is a doctor. So I think one is really focusing on education. The other, my mom is really focusing on doing things good, to taking things really seriously, right? Because her profession is, she has to take everything very seriously as it relates to the patient's life. So she make me to take everything extremely seriously when I'm working on something. I guess that's the combination which gently influenced me to be a scientist since the childhood. And then as the time goes by, so during my undergrad, PhD and postdoc, I had a lot of good advisors and mentors. They all encouraged me, year by year to how to excel to be a good scientist.
I see. So I mean, a lot of students, when we were little, we all have a dream that we want to be a scientist one day.
Yeah.
But most people, right, they give up, or it's just a dream when you were a childhood. So in your case, you had that dream when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And then just keep continuing, right?
Yeah.
And you think it's from the encouragement from the advisor? Or?
Yeah, I think I benefited from many advisors and mentors. So for example, when I'm making big moves if I want to move on to next step in my scientific career, I would check with multiple mentors and then take the average of their advice. It's typically go down to the root of scientist. So that's how I end up here.
I see. Well, talking about that, I saw your PhD, right, was not really physics.
Yeah.
You did STM work, but it was more like a material oriented.
Yeah.
So how did you go from material oriented to now just pure physics?
So in terms of story, in my second year of my PhD, I think I was already relatively good in doing STM measurement. So I was talking to my PhD advisor, which group is the best group, STM group in the world. Then he said, oh, there is this person in Cornell who can do extremely superior STM, that he put the tip on the surface and maintain extremely close junction for years. And then I found that very cool. Then 2 years later, one day I was eating lunch in my college, and then my peers were randomly chatting gossips, say, oh, this famous guy from Cornell is moving to Oxford. so I took that as as an opportunity, as I always want to move to physics, and then it happened to be a big opportunity when Seamus moved from the States to the UK. So I decided to switch to, well, I always wanted to switch the field because materials is a lot about incrementing research rather than making new breakthroughs and making new discoveries. So during my postdoc, I applied for 50% of physics positions and 50% of materials positions in STM. I got a lot of materials offers, but thankfully the one got me most excited is the physics postdoc offer from Seamus. Yeah.
I see. So you for a long time you wanted to work with Seamus already.
Yeah, I think it's an idea from my PhD supervisor.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So what if he did not move to Oxford? Right? If he's studying Cornell, would you still apply to his postdoc and continue work with him?
Yeah, I think I applied for many postdoc positions, and most of them are in the States.
I see.
So if he didn't move to Oxford, I will probably do a postdoc in the States.
I see. I see. So, well, he moved to Oxford at the time. Did you spend a lot of time in Cornell or in Oxford?
I started at Oxford for about 2 to 3 years. And then about 3 years, I think I have learned a lot at Oxford. If I move on to next step in my career, it's better to go to a different place. Then Seamus said to me, there's this visiting scientist opportunity in Cornell in my group. I can go there, especially by then, since I have done 3 years of hardcore data analysis on the cuprate data, and at the same time, the machine at Cornell started to work on uranium ditelluride. But this field, there was little STM done by that time. So if I can transfer all my knowledge and expertise in cuprate to the uranium ditelluride STM data, it will significantly accelerate the project there. Then I took that as an advantage and as also a step change in my scientific career to go to Cornell.
I see. So you spent the last few years in Cornell.
Yeah.
I see. I mean, if you look at your resume, right? You started from Oxford as a PhD student, then you moved to Cornell in James Davis group as a postdoc, then you come here as a professor in University of Bristol. All very good, right? Very impressive. So is there any setback point in your academic life which you feel like very frustrated, I don't want to continue? Is there a moment like that?
Well, there are multiple frustrated moments, but there is no thought of I don't want to continue. So, for example, the first major setback is COVID, right? Everyone knows about COVID, although nowadays people are forgetting about COVID. When I first joined Seamus lab in 2019, it was winter 2019, and then it was a completely empty lab. I need to build a lab.
That was in Oxford.
That was at Oxford. Okay. My postdoc just started. So that means I need to do all the purchasing, designing, etc. But suddenly there is this stupid COVID. What that means is all the suppliers stopped to supply magnets, and then there is lockdown. Machine shop can still working, but it's difficult to put the team together to build machines. As everything we are doing are all home built, there's little commercial parts. So it requires team efforts to machining and build them together. But because of social distancing, it was difficult to assemble all the teams together. And also it's difficult to communicate as well, since I just switched from materials to physics. A lot of the things are new, but everyone was locked down at that time. It's difficult to ask questions. So thankfully, we still have STM data in the group, and then I have been constantly working on data analysis for about 2 to 3 years to get my research going while slowly building up the lab over COVID.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So at the time, was James in Oxford or he was in Cornell?
He was in Craig at home. Lockdown.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He wasn't in Oxford by that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so mainly it was you building the lab.
Yeah, me and my team, but I was the relatively senior one. Although, because I started to follow up during the group meetings 7 months before I finished my PhD, so I already know everything quite well. Then I was the mini group leader during the COVID.
Okay, I see. So you are already kind of PI-ish, very independent, starting from your postdoc.
Yeah.
Right. And so for a lot of people, building a new lab that's takes a lot of time. So a lot of people, they don't want to do that, right? They want to join a group where everything is ready.
Yeah.
I can just jump in and take
Yeah.
data.
Yeah.
So you spend a lot of time building this.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
It's a very interesting question, right? So at the end of my PhD, I was thinking where I can go to do my postdoc, and I got multiple offers, and then I was most excited by Seamus research, but I also feel a little bit scared because everything is from scratch. Then I talked to my mentors. They say this is very exciting, go for it. Then I talked to my peers. Half of them said, "You are so stupid. I'm not going to take a postdoc position like that." But interestingly, 4 years later, I'm doing much better than my peers. They are still working on their existing machines and existing lab, whereas I built the lab and I made a career while they're still doing their postdocs.
Do you think if that's because you're very good, you're just better, or you think this building lab experience that actually give you something additional?
Yeah, I think one, of course, I learned a lot of technical things, right? Because designing the lab from scratch, not everyone has that experience. And then in terms of philosophy and strategy, I learned about risk mitigation. So I learn to set multiple threats ongoing because maybe 80% of them will fail. But if the 20% of my plans work, then I can get going with building the lab. It's just like during the COVID, I need to purchase something, but everyone is locked down. So I send multiple emails, ask multiple suppliers until find one supplier who is not in lockdown, something like that. But the other thing, the reason I choose to do such an instrumentation postdoc is that I very like the high risk, high gain style of research. And to me, if I succeeded in building the lab, I know my career will be exponential growth. So although it's quite flat in the first 3 years, but suddenly there is an exponential growth. This was what got me excited when I took up the position. Yeah.
I see. So now you're building your own lab, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make it even better?
So because my postdoc advisor is the #1 in the field, it's very difficult to be better than him. Then I decided to do something different. For example, my advisor likes the hardcore, very high single axis magnetic field. I would think to, not do this hardcore high field, but I can do field in multiple directions. Then I can look at the topological things.
Vector magnet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the second thing is that one reason my advisor is so good is that he's extremely focused on the most difficult scientific question. And then when he focused on one material, he attacked it for years and decades. So what that means for me is that as long as I don't study that his favorite materials, I'll be fine, right?
I see.
I will be different.
I see. Another question I want to ask you. So, as a female scientist, we always say, this is a field dominated by men scientists. As a female scientist, do you feel like pressure or you feel like a bias? Do you feel that?
It's interesting you ask that. Typically, it's my female colleagues who ask that. But it's good for you to pick up this trend in the field. Well, so as my career progressed to the senior position, the ratio of the percentage of female colleagues is decreasing slowly, from 3-to-1 in my undergrad, 3-to-1 in my PhD, to 10 to 20 to 1 in my postdoc. And then my current status is also, there's a very high gender ratio, especially in the female academic circle, since I'm the only female academic circle in the quantum materials at Bristol. I guess because this happens gradually, so I can pick up how to learn the rules in this environment gradually. For example, I used to feel this sort of thing, but when I started to think like my male colleagues, like being outspoken, intentional, targeted, be clear about exactly what I want, and then speak out my needs, rather than worrying about emotions. As long as I don't care much about the emotional side, then all of this becomes equivalent, right? The idea is that I learn how to make my career in condensed matter physics by mimicking what my male colleagues are doing and their style of behaving. So as long as we behave similar, because I can't change my gender or I can't change my voice, I can still mimic their behavior to to get used to the rules in condensed matter physics.
I see. But I mean, you have been doing very well. You're doing, I think, better than a lot of male scientists like me, right? So I think so when you are have a lot of this, people, what do you think if people say, oh, she got this, for example, last year I think you got a very prestigious prize, and you get I saw that you get a lot of award already. What if people say, oh, that's only because Shuqiu is a female scientist, right? We want a award female scientist. When people say something like that, what do you think?
Well, so when I was at the same level as those people, I heard a lot of those things. But as my career progressed, even though I know they still talk about that sort of thing, but I couldn't hear them anymore because they are, 2 levels below me, if that makes sense. So an interesting trend is that when I was at the same level of some of my peers, I hear this frequently or even daily. And then when I got my position, well, that's 1 level above those peers, I heard it less frequently, though I still hear it from time to time. Until I got that award, then they're just too far away to talk this shit to me. Yeah.
I see. But mentally, when you hear that, what do you think? How do you deal with that? Or you can just ignore, or you still feel, well, that's frustrating that they think this way. What's your mental status when you hear something like that?
As you got the same prize, so when you got the prize, you receive a very warming letter from the most important scientist in low temperature physics. So I printed out that email from Oxford Instrument. It says, one thing I really appreciate is that Martin, the CEO of Oxford Instrument, said I'm really worth for the prize winner of this year. As long as whenever I hear something I don't want to hear, I look at Matt's email and I'm happy again.
I see.
Yeah.
See. Well, that's a very good mindset. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I learned something from this, right? So you just be strong, right? And you can ignore those other noise, right?
Yeah.
Just do your thing, be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Thanks.
So what do you do when you have free time?
Well, I like this question. The answer of this always change as a function of location and my
Okay.
job. So right now I'm an academic, so I have a lot of travels. When I go to conferences or seminars, I like to stay 1 day or two, do some tourism in that place. Now my biggest topic becomes travel, and it's good to feel like I'm going to a conference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going on holiday, but I'm also working.
Okay.
Right? But also when I don't have any conference or seminars, I like to go to pure holidays as well, as I have recently been to Italy to visit multiple places.
I see.
The reason I like traveling is that especially for those conferences and seminars, is that I can get to visit a lot of exciting places, as many prestigious universities are in interesting cities and vibrant cities. And I got to meet many intellectual and interesting people that I like and make new friends. Yeah, that's why I like traveling.
So what's the next city on your top of your list?
I plan to go to Madrid soon.
Okay.
In Spain. I haven't been to Madrid yet, and there's also a dilution refrigerator STM lab that they get down to tens of millikelvin in Madrid. So
Is that Herman?
Yeah, Herman Studer. I plan to visit
Okay.
him later this year in Madrid.
I plan to interview him.
Oh, nice. He's working on uranium distillery as well.
I think so.
Yeah.
So my PhD advisor, Paul Canfield, is a good friend of him.
Ah.
And when I was PhD student, Herman sent a student to Paul's group, and we worked a little bit together on a project. So we have some paper co-authored.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that.
I met Herman once or twice before. I don't know if he still remember me.
I'm sure he will.
But yeah, I'll try to interview him.
Yeah, that will be very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's actually German, not Spanish.
Oh, I see. All right. So since you are a very successful scientist, can you share your secret of being successful?
Well, I'm happy to share. I'm not sure it will apply to everyone. So I think about science and research 24/7, and I never stops.
Wow, that's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It takes time to get trained to be like that. There's a slower ramp up. For example, recently, I was doing my response to reviewers for my EPSRC grant application. I have been intensively focusing on that response for 2 weeks, days and night. And then even when I slept in the night, I dreamed about my reviewers' comments.
Wow, I hope you did not have a nightmare.
But then I got my grant. So. Well, if I got a nightmare, it's typically the opposite, right? And in the end, I got my grant last week, so it all worked out.
Yeah.
Thanks. And then the second thing is to follow the momentum. So for example, if I'm getting on to do something well, and then I keep working on that thing to go quite deep, rather than suddenly switch to different things, because it takes time to pick up the momentum. Yeah, this is a minor strategy.
All right. Well, that's all my questions. You have anything else to share? Anything else to say?
What's the secret for you to be so successful?
Well, That's a hard question. We'll talk about that later.
So we're actually going down to see how it's floating.
Do you want to go down? Or
Yeah.
should I go down first?
Well, you go down, I follow you. Oh, let's see. Oh.
Be careful.
Pretty crowded in here.
Yeah. This is the Q slab that is floating by the six air springs. And
Where's the spring?
This one.
That's a spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a 23 tons concrete slab.
Okay, so the concrete slab is supported by the spring.
Yeah.
I see.
And each spring is sitting on a
Another concrete.
thing. Yeah.
Okay, so between this concrete and this concrete, there is a spring.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
And
how.
then, yeah.
I see. That's the idea. I see.
It floats the slab. And if you look at here, when the slab is floating, there will be a small gap.
There's a small gap. So this piece and this piece is one piece.
Yeah.
I see. I see.
When it's floating, that gap will increase.
I see. All right.